Welcome to another episode of RezX, an Indigenous lifestyle show for everyone. My name is Cadmus Delorme. I am the host for tonight. I'm a lone host. My co-host, Erin Goodpipe, got snagged at the powwow, and she has been gone since. Shacked up, I hope not, but Erin, I miss you. I was at the powwow. I seen her walking away as I was into my Bannock burger. So Erin, I miss you. Come back soon. On today's episode of RezX, we will be looking at Word Up Poetry Slam. We will be looking at Sharon Acoose's book reading, An Arrow in My Heart. We also have a public service announcement on the importance of voting in the upcoming election. We then sit down with our Rez experts to talk about the importance of voting. We then have in the episode, we will sit down with Regina's own kinder scout. So please sit back, enjoy RezX. And here we go. Our first story was hosted by the Saskatchewan Writers Guild and Sikgewi Walk with headliners Kevin Westesquate and Zoe Presley, the Word Up Poetry Slam. RezX was there. Check it out.
Yo. You see, it's about all of these alphabetically correct people who are meandering from east to west without prejudice. The art of the written word for me is basically what you're reading off of the page. I love to describe someone, I don't even know where this came from, but it's a page poet turned stage poet, right? So I took a lot of my poetry that I was writing over the years and I converted those pieces with a little bit of research into stage poetry. Now, stage poetry has a little bit of a performance element, and in regards to competition-wise, you know, you could win first, second, third, first, second, or third place, right, with your poetry, and your audience is your judge. So essentially, your audience becomes your editing process at the same time. So when you're writing your piece, you're actually, when you're performing your piece, you're actually taking an edit at the same time, because if you move on, then the crowd loved your piece, and there's not too much you can do with it. It's already good, right? If a piece doesn't get voted through, what's going on? Why is the piece not working? Is it something of your performance? Were you not loud enough? Did you not put any kind of gestures towards anything that you were saying, like as a performance, right? Or was the content, maybe the content was clashing with the audience? There's a lot of things that you have to take into account when you're doing a spoken word piece. Like, if you're doing a spoken word piece, you don't want to offend anybody. Once you start getting into, offending your audience, then, you're not going to move forward with your competition wise.
Hey guys and ladies and other folks, it's so nice to be here.
Well, some of the issues that I talk about are colonialism and the impacts of colonialism. So one of my poems, O Canada, goes back to 1749 and talks about the process of colonialism and the implications it has on the Indigenous person today. So like an Indigenous person my age. What I provide is a message of hope, resilience, and community. At the end of the day, I'm just trying to make the world a better place. My gift is spoken word, and that's how I can use the message to create a stronger community and carry on the oral tradition which is inherent to my responsibility as an Indigenous woman. Well, I think as a spoken word poet, I do have a responsibility to come from a place of knowledge and carry the message, which is ultimately the same goal of someone carrying on the oral tradition. I think at the end of the day, we as spoken word artists are storytellers, and that's our responsibility. And I think in the present day context, that's the best way we're going to be able to reach young Indigenous youth and carry on that message.
We're getting our brother scholar fitted with ambitions of domination, and we're refraining from the movement in the act of assimilation.
When I listen to Zoe preach and speak poetry, I could just feel the passion. She doesn't have notes. She just speaks it from the heart, from experience, self-reflection. Every one of us are kind of have poetry within us, but how we speak it, that's what really makes someone from someone else. If I was to speak poetry, I'd talk about taking my wife to KFC and licking each other's fingers after we're done. And that's why I'm not someone in poetry. Great job. If you're a poet, if you want to be one, find your goal and get there. Amazing. Our next story, Sharon Acoose, member of the Sakamay First Nation, professor at First Nations University of Canada, came out with a book, An Arrow in My Heart. RezX was there as she did her reading in Fort Capel. Check it out.
So my name is Sharon Acoose, Sharon Leslie Acoose. I come from the Sakamay First Nation, which is over that way somewhere, 24 area. I think the overall message is that I think it's to hold on to hope and that to never give up. And whether you're addicted to alcohol, drugs, or you come from the street or wherever you come from, just know that there's nothing that you can do that you cannot do in your life. That's what the message I want to give is that, and to never give up and just surrender. To be able to come and speak, because it's important that we share our stories. You know, it's just by reading it and seeing what I've gone through, that everything that I've gone through, maybe they're going through it, and you know, hopefully they can find the way out that I did, right? Just reading it and knowing that it's time. Sometimes it's just time for us to change our lives, right? More of our women out there that need to hear this and need to be able to come forward and be strong, because this is not easy stuff. You know, I've gotten strong over the years, but telling my story is never easy.
I really identified with her story. I felt her story is very important, especially in the time of missing and murdered Aboriginal women. And I thought, because Fort Capel has such a high population of First Nations people, that it would be important for them to hear her story as well.
I read this part, it's on page 96, it's the ending, so I just read this. It says the beginning. So here we are at the end, it is only the beginning. I do not want to say this is the end or the conclusion, because it is not. This book has been on the back burner for a very long time, even before I started school, the PhD that is. And now it just kind of, it turned from a journal to this, right? And I said, well, I'm gonna write my life story. I have so many people on Facebook saying, when can I get the book? I can't find the book, where can I find the book? It's always sold out. So it's been just an amazing thing.
Such a heartwarming story to hear about someone coming from one extreme to such a successful ending. You know, Sharon, I had the opportunity and privilege of growing up on my reserve, and Sharon being close to my reserve. She came to this school, gave us encouragement, and today I am successful because of stories like Sharon has shared. That book is important for all nationalities to read because it talks about the reality that people go through today. Sharon, thank you for writing such a book that talks about your personal life right into your academic life. If there's one thing I got out of the book when I read it, is that you set your goal and don't let anything get in your way. Every time a challenge comes upon, just remember that that's just a little bit of a speed bump to your ultimate goal. So get the book, you can get it online. Our next story is a public service announcement. This summer, 2015, if you have radio or TV, you're going to hear about the upcoming election. Well, RezX is here to help you get to yourself to exercise your right to vote. Check it out.
You need to prepare now for this fall's federal election.
Step 1, you need to register with this website.
You're going to need 2 pieces of ID. One of them should be a government-issued ID that has both your name and your address on it, like your license. A second piece of ID could be your birth certificate, your social insurance card, or your Métis or status card. If you don't have these items, please go to Service Canada as soon as possible.
The other step you can take is if you have both IDs without a current address, you can also get someone to swear an oath for you at the voting station.
Exercise your right to vote this year.
October 19th, get out and vote.
At Access, we love technology. Not the kind that costs an arm and a leg and does stuff you don't need. The kind that makes your life easier and more fun, like the new Access Evo. You won't believe what this box holds for you.
Welcome back. Our next story, RezX's very own Shawneen Pete and Chris Ross went to Carry the Kettle First Nation powwow, did a streeters and asked people if they're going to vote in the upcoming election, and if they are, why are they going to vote? Check it out.
Question for you is, will you be voting in this year's election?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, yeah, I think so. You know, with the present day government, Harper, he's gotta go. I think he doesn't respect treaties of the people, the first people of this land.
Our question for you today is, will you be voting in the next election?
Oh yes, I think First Nations need to be represented in our election. It's very important for us to speak up on our own treaty rights.
Yes, I definitely will be voting in this year's federal election. The reason why is I believe it's very important for our First Nations people to have a voice, to have a say, as the government seems to overlook First Nations issues, and they're very important. And I believe with the majority of our First Nations people, there's a high growth all across Canada. And I believe that we can make an impact if we can encourage all our First Nations members to come out and vote. If we can put that much effort into band elections, we should be putting that same effort into voting in federal elections, as it's very, very important who governs us.
Of course. My grandfather fought for the right for us as Aboriginal people, as First Nations people, to vote. And if we don't vote, what's going to happen is they're going to take over again, and people are not coming forward like they did through I don't know more. The only way we can stop this is by going and voting. And voting, I don't care who people vote for, but we need to vote because we have a voice.
And why is voting important for you?
It's important on so many levels. I'm an educator. And being an educated First Nation woman, there's not enough happening with the education for our First Nations Aboriginal children. So that's my number one reason, is I want to see change. There's so much damage that has been done by the current Conservative government, and we see it everywhere. And it's present everywhere. And it's really depressing. So I want to make a change. I want to see the Conservative government voted out.
And do you know who you'll be voting for in the next federal election?
I think I'm going to go with NDP. I know. The thing is, I never used to vote before, but you know, it's getting to a point now where I think everybody should vote. Everybody should have a say in this election this year.
No, I don't. I don't know who the candidates are in our area yet, but I'm very interested on voting.
I'm still up in the air trying to find out between the NDP and the Liberals. I'm still trying to see what Trudeau has to offer. I'm not seeing anything right now. I'm really kind of going towards NDP because I really appreciated Jack Layton.
Well, right now I'm going through the literature. I'm going online. I'm reading. I'm making mental notes. And I'm listening to other people, and I'm hearing what our leadership has to say. So I'm treading very carefully. And in my mind, whoever gets in has to be really sympathetic. They have to listen to our voices. And we have to be heard, and they have to be willing to meet us on a nation-to-nation basis.
Thank you.
Sitting with me today, I have the Res experts. I have Mr. Chris Ross, Mr. Jay Bird, and Dr. Shawneen Pete. Dr. Shawneen Pete is one of our Res experts, a member of the Little Pine First Nation. Thank you for being a part of the panel as well.
Thanks, Cadmus.
So Chris and Shawneen, you went to Carry the Kettle First Nation powwow, and you asked about the upcoming election coming up for voting. Please tell us about it.
It was a great experience. We met with about 7 or 8 people,
And we asked them the question, will you be voting in this year's election? And then we asked people why. It was fantastic. And I thought people were really willing to have this conversation.
Yeah, and plus, we also asked, like, are you going to vote, yes or no? And everybody said yes. So it was really refreshing to see that people want to get involved.
That's right.
Well,
Voting will make a difference in certain ridings. Jay, why are you voting first?
Yes.
So let me ask, why do you feel it's important to vote in the upcoming election?
Why is it important to vote? I think every vote counts, and you have the right to vote. You should use it. And I think this time around, especially, there seems to be more at stake. A lot more things have happened over the past 8 years. That people should really consider each party, look at everything that's there, and use their power. And their power is to vote.
For sure. Elections, parties, set the economic standards, the social policy standards. Chris, are you voting?
Yes, yes.
So why is it important to vote from Chris's perspective in the upcoming election?
Well, ever since I was 18, I was always practiced my democratic right to vote. And I've always encouraged others, whether if I was living with roommates or family members, just to go out and vote, just even if your candidate doesn't have a chance, just go out and vote anyways, because at least you can say that you've participated. And, maybe, and it does make a difference as well, too. So I think it's just very well as important. Just also to encourage other people to get involved.
Important. That one vote does make a difference. Dr. Shawneen Pete, are you voting in this upcoming election?
Absolutely, I'll be voting.
So,
it's really important, I think, that we all participate in it. I think about my dad, and when my dad was a police officer in '67, up until that point, he didn't have the right to vote in this country. And so this is a relatively new right that we have, and I think we better exercise it.
That's right. Indigenous people, First Nation people, status Indians in Canada only had that right to vote since 1962, I believe. So, we're going on second and third generations, voting. I remember growing up, when I turned 18, I did not vote, only because my parents did not vote. And, growing up in a home where you don't see something, you don't really act upon it. But, as I started to become more aware of issues and opportunities and challenges, I do vote today. And I go home and my parents vote today because I encourage them to vote. So how does someone know who to vote for, or what parties are going to be promising things, they're going to be saying this and saying that? Chris, where do you get your information on party definitions and more kind of who you not stand with, but more believe that's going to run this country right?
Well, I think social media plays like a really important role in that, and I'm on social media all the time. So really whatever candidate is the most popular, not popular, but uses that tool a lot more is going to connect with a voter like myself as well. So that's kind of what I look for. I also look at, what each party can bring to the table, especially not just First Nations. I don't just look at that. I also look at it as small business. I run a small business, so I also look at those kinds of things as well. And also for my family, like what kinds of things are going to be offered for those.
For sure. Jay, Shawneen, you want to jump in?
Where I would go is I would check out, what I usually do is read a lot of articles. That's the first thing that I do. And social media is good for that, whether you're on Twitter or Facebook. There's always some article brought out by somebody on each party that you can read about, pros and cons, and it's good to weigh all alternatives and to find out exactly what someone believes and why they believe it, and what someone else believes and how they counteract with one another. Gives you a good understanding of all the alternatives. So that's usually what I do when it comes to voting. I usually will read everybody's stuff.
For sure.
I know with this election that government has been in there for 8 years, so they have a record you can actually take a look at and you can review it. The other candidates are rather new. They've been around for a while, but they're newer. But you can actually go take a look at their websites and you can review that.
And for me, I do my homework. So I contact the candidates in my area.
Okay.
And I have questions. I ask them questions. I phone them directly. I go to their offices. If they're having gatherings, I ask to be invited.
Okay.
So I've sat down with some of the candidates, with other constituents, and we sit together and have conversations. And I grill them. Oh boy, do I ever ask them a lot of questions. I ask them where they stand and what do they believe in, and what are the party's opinions about particular issues of concern for Indigenous peoples.
Awesome. So someone sitting there watching this right now, what do they need to vote? Do they have to register? Do they have to go on the website and see if they need ID? What is it that they need to do right now?
Step one is to register.
Okay.
To go online and register, which I think we're doing a promo on that as well.
Good.
And then second, you're going to need the correct ID.
Good.
And that's also being something that we film as well for RezX.
That's good. So what's some last minute words you can get out there and vote? Maybe 5 seconds each. Give us a little spiel about why they should be encouraged and excited to vote.
Well, I think like First Nations youth make up, half of the First Nations population. So that's like power in numbers right there. So that's kind of just shows like, let's make a difference of like, collectively of what we can
For sure. Certain ridings
achieve.
could really be shaken up if everybody exercises that right. Jay?
Yeah, this time you can change things. If you get out there and vote, you can actually change the context of Saskatchewan and even of the federal government in Canada.
Be the change.
Exactly.
Shawnee?
This is a family event. I think aunties and uncles should be getting excited and saying to the 18-year-olds and their families, come on, this is a great opportunity. This is a rite of passage, and I want to celebrate it with you. And I think families should be getting together, loading up that van, and heading to the polls.
There you go. Load up the Powell van, get to the polls. I'd like to thank the Res experts for sharing with us. Thank you very much.
Indian nation, a proud legacy, a reminder, oh, that's old. Indian nation, keeper of a great.
Welcome back. Before we get to our last story, I just want to say how lonely I was this episode without my co-host, Erin. She probably did get snagged, but she's all right, so no fear of where my co-host is. She will be joining me on location next week. If she was here right now, I just know what she would want to tell me. Oh, Cadmus, you smell so good. Thanks, Erin. That's the Acoose res water that I grew up showering in. No, I don't know if she'd tell me that. But Erin, it's always good to be a co-host with you, and I can't wait for you to be back. Next week, Erin and I will be at the 2015 First Nation Summer Games hosted by the Ochapowace First Nation. Our last story, during RezX's launch, we had bands, and Kinder Scout was one of our bands that played live. RezX got to sit down with Kinder Scout, Regina's own, and they played some music. Check it out.
I'm Dale MacArthur. I'm the singer and guitarist with Kinder Scout.
I'm Todd Wakefield and I play bass.
Kinder Scout has been around for about two and a half years about there when I was starting to write some songs and whatever, and it just became Kinder Scout, and then the band formed in early 2014, and away we went.
I've been with the band for about a year. When I first joined the band, Dale had so many songs already written that I was just learning the stuff they already had done. In the last little bit here, we've been writing and making new material as not just me picking up what Dale's already written, but being part of the writing process, and I think that's made us tighter as a group. Everywhere we go, we get this positive feedback that everybody seems to really like what we're doing, so we're going to keep doing it, and hopefully people will still like it when we're at the end of the road.
Growing up on White Bear Reserve on First Nation, that's where I was always spending my time, was listening to music, listening to my brother's older, his vintage cassettes, I guess, his records and whatnot, and I just kind of caught the bug and started to dive into all sorts of music since then, and it's always been just a part of my life growing up, and here it is today.
I've been playing music since I was about a teenager, somewhere like 14 years old. Music has always kind of been a release for me growing up in a small town where you had nothing to do. Music was a big part of my time filler growing up, and then it a love, it turned into a passion, it turned into something I wanted to do.
It's been well received. Like, we're getting better and better. We're also our own worst critics, so that's what we look for. I don't know, it's a bad habit of mine anyway. I tend to look for the bad in my performances every show, but at the same time, the feedback has been great from fans and reviews and things like that. So it's been a fun ride. I was looking forward to getting better at our next show as we go.
I love the energy exchange that takes place. When you're putting energy out to the crowd and they lock into you and they're giving it back to you, there's no other feeling or no other way to get the feeling that I get anyway. When you're asking the crowd to clap along or sing along and they're just right there with you, they want to participate. That to me is very cool.
We just finished the first EP that I put out was a solo EP. January this year, and we've got enough material now. We're going to do a full-length album here after our summer's over. On our summer schedule, we're going to hit our studio, Dakota Red Productions, and put out a full-length CD by fall or early winter this year. So